How do you get good fast? While people learn new skills and want to become an artist or creator for many reasons, most will attest that to be good at something can take years. We have that 10,000 hours or 10 years. In fact, if you look at most artists, they'll say they took about 10 years to get good by being self-taught. But what if you could do it quicker? What if there is a way to speed up the time and compress that into a fraction of the time and get good fast? After all, wouldn't it be good to be great now? Or at least wouldn't it be good to know that you don't have to spend a significant amount of time, or even of your life, to get good? So if you want to learn the secrets to getting good fast, or if you struggle with your self-doubt when you learn something, you have that nagging voice from your school saying, "You'll never be good," or you don't have the time to commit to learning something new because of other pressures, or perhaps you're a business and wonder why you have a high drop-off rate from new subscribers, or you want to retain those who do come in, then this is for you. In 2020, COVID hit. I was left, like many people, wondering what I was going to do with my business. I just started it prior to this as a new online venture. But then when COVID and lockdown came along, probably with many others, I started to question whether what I was going to do was really what I wanted to do. And then, by a strange chance, this happened. A friend's dog companion passed away while we were all in lockdown. He was his best friend, and he was devastated. My wife asked if I could draw him and send it to him, hoping it might offer some comfort. Only having drawn ours a while earlier, though, it took me ages to complete and it was okay. I agreed. What else was I to do, and if I could help him in his hour of need? A couple of days after we gave it to him, my wife said to me, "Hey, have you seen his Instagram feed? It's gone nuts." I looked, and there were loads of likes, loves, and comments, and some asking for theirs to be drawn. My wife looked at me with that knowing look that it's coming. Why don't you post it elsewhere and see if other people might want one? What else was I to do other than eat crisps and watch Netflix during lockdown? I posted it on Facebook, and I was shocked with the response. I was suddenly inundated with requests for commissions. My wife, she looked at me with that knowing look again. At this point, I had one of those, "What do I do with my life?" moments. It was after COVID, after all, and I'm sure I wasn't alone in thinking, "Am I really doing what I want to do?" thoughts. 3.5 years later, a few hundred portraits under my belt and quite a bit wiser, this is what I'd noticed. But why me? Let me take you back a bit. My background was in success development. I'd spent 30 years developing and teaching people how to be successful using psychology. My clients had ranged from Virgin to the military, Rolls-Royce, health companies, telecoms, as well as private high net worth individuals. I built programs that changed the paradigm on what presenting actually is, so that people could be confident and deliver even if they don't have the skills of a seasoned presenter and more. So when I started to draw, I found myself in a rather curious position, both that of a learner and also that of someone trying to figure this whole thing out. I went through each of the phases of learning, along with extra wrinkles, more grey hair, and a family that thought I was going nuts. I watched everyone else online that I thought was awesome and had that first realization. I'd never be as good as them. I'm a little over midlife and don't have the years learning available to me as a luxury, nor as a second income to act as a cushion if things didn't work out. So how was I going to get good enough? Because why would people buy my work for X price when they could go to someone else, some of the best, and get theirs? You see, if I was to charge a low rate because I was starting out, we'd never have enough money for anything. So I needed to get good enough, fast, to charge high enough. And then came along this one thing I never expected or even knew existed. I got imposter syndrome. I mean, where did that just come from? It was like it arrived on my doorstep and landed squarely in my mind's inbox. What was all that about? Without knowing why, I started to look at my work and everyone else's, and I compared myself to theirs and just went, oh, why are people buying from me? I'm not good enough. I don't get it. And my only way out of this that I could see was to get so good that I jumped that fence completely and could say, hey, I've arrived at the land of excellent and awesome. I'd set my standards so high that if I achieved it, then people would buy my stuff and I'd be completely at peace knowing that what they'd bought was worth everything they paid for it. So for quite a long time, I really felt that my work, while I liked every piece I did and was completely happy with it, I didn't think it ranked as good as other people's that I'd seen. And so I constantly put myself down. Now, this is a double struggle for me. Why? Because I'd spent years helping people with their confidence and self-esteem, etc. But here it was, smacking itself in my face like a sloppy fish of no confidence every day. And don't get me wrong, there were a lot of portraits that I was very proud of, that I was constantly comparing myself to the best of the best. I realized that I needed to learn what they did. But there was no real way to do this. I was so overwhelmed by not knowing what to do and how to get good fast. Or which technique should I use? And what materials do I need? Which ones are the best ones to use? How do I get the lighting right? And what about the fur? And don't get me started on the eyes. I almost came to a complete standstill and wanted to throw the towel in. I didn't think I'd ever get good enough to be good enough and earn the living I needed to earn. I spent so much time searching across YouTube posts, blogs, forums, Instagram, and every other social out there trying to find everything I needed to get good fast. Instead, all I got was overwhelm from all the different ways people were approaching their own style. Surely, I thought, there must be a course somewhere that gives me all of the foundations and techniques I needed to get good quick. But my screen lay empty, week after week as I searched in vain. There was no such course. And just before the overwhelm and imposter syndrome got me good, I changed what I was doing. There were so many times I wanted to quit. It was getting to be too much. It was mentally and emotionally hard trying to piece it all together. All the while, everyone was saying how much they liked my work, but I never felt it was good enough. And that's because I compared myself to the best of the best. I'd watched them post their work on Instagram and not only wanted, but needed to be that good, so I could earn a living and not drown in hours of drawing for what was so unfairly less than minimum wage. I was tired of watching follow-along videos. They really didn't teach me anything other than to follow along. How on earth do I translate what I just followed into techniques so I could do it myself next time? On top of that, everyone was doing something different each time. Their art was different, their styles were different, and they had different techniques, different materials or colors that they'd used. And I didn't want to become a carbon copy of them. I wanted my own style. But then something really interesting happened just as I was about to finally give up. I realized that I stumbled onto something really quite unique, a secret doorway into all of their art. So I started to fervently look again at what they were doing. I went at it furiously. I spent hours and hours, weeks upon week, watching intently and paying attention to something specific that I realized stemmed from my background in psychology. I didn't think it would work here because it has a specific modus operandi for modeling. But here it was, working. It was like I was getting a backdoor show to all of their secrets. And then I realized what they were doing, and then practiced what they did. And then the magic started to happen. Every portrait I drew ended up different. I kept saying to my wife, I've tried something new today. And she'd respond with the same thing every time. Again? She'd reply as she chuckled and walked away. I was in fact working out that between all of these great artists, they shared things in common. There were certain things they'd do with the pencils, colors, layers, and fur, particular ways that they'd create depth and light. Noses would work best one way, eyes another way. There was a pattern emerging from all of their work, and I was unconsciously using this pattern in my work until one day I created the Maine Coon cat, which was the culmination of everything I'd spent the last 3 years learning. And what would have taken most people 30 to 40 hours to create, and myself back then, took me only 6 hours to draw. What I had was a blueprint, a formula, or a framework of how to create great art without the years of overwhelm, struggle, and frustration. Fast. This was so important to me because I knew that I could use this framework to recreate other art any time. And I knew with certainty that it was going to always be great and that I'd always be proud of it. It would always be ready to be framed. But the biggest thing for me was that I knew that I could create beautiful pieces in a fraction of the time it used to take because these were principles with techniques that were connected to them, and that I could finally earn the living that I wanted to. No more minimum wage and more happy customers. Just by knowing these principles, I could apply specific techniques connected to them that will give consistent results. Unbelievable, right? I couldn't believe it. I discovered exactly what I needed and had managed to create a system, an approach to every single drawing in future that completely vanished my overwhelm, the imposter syndrome. And now I could move forward knowing I had plenty of time. Because you see, when I created the cat, something dawned on me. What had been missing all this time since I started was the same common problem I'd seen in so many other artists and creators. In fact, I'd seen it not only with them, but also the businesses I'd worked in with their training programs. I'd had experience of it joining other people's courses. I'd had experience of it using software or trying to know how to use it by looking at online tutorials. And then it reminded me of how I learnt when I'd learnt how I taught the psychology, NLP to people, my students back then, that I hadn't seen, and why I and my peers, as well as my previous students, learned so easily and got good fast. One of the biggest problems I see with artists or those learning and why they stop, get frustrated, think they're not good enough, give up, and say they'll never be any good, which I think is sad. Because in my experience, we all have this natural aptitude to be good at creative endeavors, is that they try and run before they can walk. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's obvious, isn't it? Sure, it might seem so. In fact, we'll probably subscribe to that same principle too. But how many people realize that the very thing they're trying to do is in fact outside of their skill level and competency? And the myths and mindset that they fall prey to, that prevail their need to do things a certain way, cause the very problem that they run into. And that they use outdated methods and learning that are unnatural in our way of understanding how we function as learners. Have you ever been enthusiastic about wanting to start a new project, learn a new skill, and realize that the thing you want to make or do is just too hard? It's outside of your domain of skill. Yet you'll get all the kit, buy all the necessary stuff, spend a lot of money on it, and probably search for the right course on whatever tube comeback facegramtalk.com. You'll start with the enthusiasm of a kid in a sweet shop, only to slowly realize the way you're being taught or what you've wanted to learn is just too complicated, and you don't understand what they're teaching. Or things just are not making sense. Or you know it already, and you're too skilled at what they're teaching, so you're not learning much that's new. It's not a challenge, and you're unmotivated to want to learn. Time to start making folded airplanes, anyone? You see, what's happened is you've entered into the first big problem that affects most people when it comes to learning. You don't know what you don't know. I see people trying to draw portraits of people, or like me, pets or animals. But most of these are actually very complicated. There are, to put it, lots of moving parts. It's not just one or two things. You have to get it all right, or it just doesn't all work. You see, one thing we're really good at humans is facial recognition and detection. Sure, AI is blurring the lines a bit, and that's to be expected. Learning from billions of pictures and understanding the patterns. It's not that we as humans can't do it, or don't, but our output is different. It's neuromuscular. So our brain has to translate from a picture that we see into making our neurology do something to recreate it. It's like being a football player and then asking them to be good at maths, if they're not already. The behavior is different than a cognitive skill. So when it comes to learning something that requires skill acquisition, It has to go through this highly complex set of process to arrive at what we'd say is awesome. Now, we do this already. In fact, we did this as kids. We learnt to crawl, stand, and then run. But it didn't happen in a couple of weeks. We learnt from watching our parents and those around us. We'd try, fail, and keep this up, but improve with each iteration until, yay, we could do it. But as an adult, we go, hey, I want to learn how to draw. I know, I'll draw a face. And then we fail. It'll look out of place. The features won't look right. The proportions are wrong. The hair looks like straw. The colors are grandiose, etc. Because we've taken something that we think we can do, because we go, I can draw. And then this tends to come from well-meaning people and intended people like our friends and family who say, I can't draw a stick figure. And if you can draw something more than a stick figure, you must be talented. So enters the second big problem, the X Factor problem. If you've ever watched a TV show, you've no doubt watched the auditions or even those that have gotten on stage in the later stages to sing, much to the disgruntled of the judges and the audiences, songs that shouldn't be sung that way. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But like faces, we also have ways of knowing if something doesn't sound right, if it's off key, off time, off volume and pitch, and well, just, you know. But what happens is this person is given a sense of the X factor by well-meaning friends and family. Hey, you can string a few notes together, you must be good. But when they get there, their hopes are dashed on the rocks of the judges' professional opinions and shattered by the starlight they thought they were going to get. So this is problem number 3. No way to know or calibrate to what success is and where they are on that line. And this is what I had when I was learning to draw, but needed to get good quick. Though I knew what good was, well, actually amazing, but I didn't know where I was. I had no path. So like so many people, it's a case of trial and error, though more error than trial, it seemed. And this then causes the next biggest problem, and one that affects more people than anything: self-belief, confidence, and then motivation. And the fallout from this can be absolutely monumental. It's like this. Imagine you have a goal. You want to get to London. You can see it from where you are. There's the big, tall landmark, the Shard. When you start out, that's fine. You can see it and you happily continue down the road until you can't. So you stop. Maybe you go back a bit, try, and get your bearings and hopefully carry on. But the more you do this, the more you get caught by things being in the way, obstructions, man-made, natural or self-made. So you'll start to develop strategies. You'll maybe ask someone. Try and take a taxi or a train. These are the fast routes, but you got to pay for them. So if you don't have any money or little, you have to use your own resources. And then it takes too long, and night's falling. So you have to find somewhere to stay. Then you got to pay for that. And then you wake up the next day and it's Groundhog Day. Sooner or later, you'll either give up because it's too tough, or you'll have the tenacity to get there, but will be fraught with obstacles along the way that will continue to obstruct your view. So you have to learn to trust yourself and have faith in your direction. And sometimes you'll see your goal clearly. But mostly, people will start to realize that actually they don't have the resources to get there. And this is where the path comes in. The path, or the ascension ladder, is a map. It's a map that lets people know where they are in relation to their goal, what's required to get there, but more importantly, what they have already. What resources, skills, capabilities, beliefs, and tools do they already have at their disposal to arrive and help them get there? You see, when I started drawing, I hadn't a map. I hadn't a clue what to do. I had a vague notion of that and a clear idea of where I wanted to get to, but no way of knowing what I needed or where I was in relation to that. I didn't have that map. So I couldn't say, hey, I'm here, and this is my next stop, because I didn't even know where here was. I had some things that I could do well, some things that were awful, and a lot of things to learn. But there wasn't any one place to learn them. There wasn't a map that said, hey artist, when you're a beginner and you can only just draw a stick figure, let's start with the fact that you can actually draw. You see, art requires only two skills, drawing a straight line and drawing a curve. This is my principle number 1. If you can do this, then you can probably do principle number 2. Join them together. The rest is just a question of lengthening or shortening each and then changing the angle until you arrive at the semblance of something recognizable. If you're not doing abstract, that is. So if the beginner has a knowledge and a skill map of where they're at and what they need to do to arrive at the next step, they don't inadvertently think that, hey, I can draw a stick figure, let's go and do the Mona Lisa. That there are stages of skill requirement and development to reach such levels. So imagine, if we break this down into 5 simple levels: 1, beginner; 2, novice; 3, intermediate; 4, advanced; and 5, professional. You can do more or less, but 5 is probably the max you'd want, and probably 3 the least. Read up on the magic number 7 plus or minus 2. At the beginner level, the types of skills for a person learning to draw. Now remember, each art style or type will have different skills related to them. So drawing a face is different to drawing a house, as well as the materials they'll be using. Watercolor is different to paint, but they do share the same and fundamental principles that I discovered, like the amount of layers and what they are, as well as color layering. Though they'll have similar aspects early on, later they'll diverge. So you can say at beginner, for someone who's drawing, there's some different aspects that they'll want to learn in terms of material, technique, and drawing technique. Or with music, there's instrument technique, and then there's timing, pitch, volume, and harmony. With drawing for beginner, there's drawing a circle, a square, shading, and coloring in. So basic shapes like line drawing, coloration, and single layers. So a beginner should be able to draw something simple and it will look good, in proportion, and be recognizable as the object that they would expect. Similarly, someone learning music could play a few chords or a melody, and the tune might be recognizable or it being safe to hear. And then as you advance to the next level of novice, there have been new learnings, layering, color combinations, tapering techniques, proportions and angles, and some work on light and shade. And the types of things expected to draw at this level might be, if it's portraits, simple portraits, limited light sources, probably of a cartoony style. Then as you progress, so the skills increase and are built upon the foundations of the prior skill levels, all the while increasing the level of complexity. You see, some people will have a natural aptitude to some of these skills that they learnt as a child or as a teenager that are also cross-referable. For example, if you can type, you've probably got the coordination and dexterity to play the piano or drums. Like if you can write, you can draw. And this is what I realized I didn't have: that map. You see, if there's no map, then it's hard to know how to get to your destination. You have to work it out on your own. And you can go down so many blind alleys and for some never get out. So the map provides a route, a guidance, and for some there are fast routes that will express your opportunity to arrive at the top earlier. Some, if you go back to our earlier analogy of the tower, are taking taxis, paying for a ride, so getting tuition going on courses. But if the map isn't clear, which means you might only have a piece of it, you'll be trying to piece it all together. This is by watching different people teach in different ways with different styles, which is fine, but you'll end up with just their map. So if ever you try to get the goal again but find yourself in a different location, i.e. trying a new medium, then the only reference you have is their starting point and route. Whereas principles and a standard map work. Imagine going to your favourite big city and using their underground without a map, or asking someone which way you should go. Confusing, right? But the tube map, while it isn't a real map, is topographical. It shows you the nodes, the principles, you could say, of where you are and which lines to follow and which stops to get off at if you choose. And so imagine the next time you joined a course and they had a, this is where you are, this is what we're teaching, this is the end game, and this is what it'll take to get there and the different stages of what you need to do and how to get there. Go through these stages and, hey presto, there you are. Wouldn't that be so much easier than just jumping into a course going, I don't have the skills for this, and where are we going with this anyway? I think I don't know, I'm going to be good at something. I'm going to be good at that, but I don't know how to get there. And even with software, where's the beginner's path? Then what do I do once I've completed that? What's the next stage? So some questions to ask yourself before you begin a course is this: what skills do I need? What do I have? What can I already do? What's my mindset? What will I do if I run into a difficulty? Who can I ask, speak to? Where else can I learn something? Is there a pathway that takes me from beginner to medium to advanced? What's the quick route? Similarly, if you're a business and you're offering a course or training, you want to have levels of learning and participation that adapt by taking people through a path. Why? Because your students will learn and grow in skill and confidence, and the better they become because of your program, the more they'll sing your praises. When I wrote the presentation skills program for Virgin, I had to do what no one else could. I had to write a course to get the staff good fast, and what they needed was a map, a structure that they could follow that would give them a result. They already knew how to stand and talk and wave their hands, and this gave them confidence. And I found this with time management programs, stress management, leadership skills. If people have a path and know what they need to get to their goal, the big building, they can plan themselves and how to get there. They just need to be shown what it is and where they are as beginners or novices or advanced. Just because you can climb a hill doesn't mean you're equipped with climbing Mount Fuji. Bigger does not mean the same, but bigger. And because of this, if you have a course to sell or want to create a course to sell where your clients get good fast, no matter the content, connect with me and I will show you how to create programs that people love, that will sell and will create loyal customers forever. And so I found in my art that after 3.5 years, I drew the first thing that I realized that I'd gotten there. And to be fair, if you'd asked me at the start, could I or would I ever be able to draw like that, I would have probably said like most people, yeah, probably in 10 to 15 years. And like most people, I probably would have never been bothered to learn to get that good. Because who wants to wait 10 or 15 years to get good at something? How do you get good fast? Immerse yourself in it. Don't do trial and error learning. Follow the path of those before you. Find them. Watch what they do intently. Practice small bits of what they do into what you do. Keep what works. Throw away what doesn't. Keep doing this. Soon you'll have a map of your own. Then teach it. Because then you'll be figuring out what really works and what doesn't when other people try and do what you do. Once you've got it figured out, then you have a model of success of how you got good.